ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Annalise,
Present.
trustee Krusek,
Present.
trustee Page,
Present.
trustee Martinez,
Present.
trustee Blair,
Present.
trustee Kagan,
Present.
Mayor Cunningham.
Present.
Quorum established.
Thank you very much. If you would please join us in a moment of silence, followed by the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance, which I'm going to ask all of us to say the Pledge of Allegiance together. So please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you, and the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under special awards, presentations, and recognitions, we do have a few items actually to go ahead and go through. And one is the appointment of a commissioner. This would be an appointment to the Plan Commission for the Village of Woodridge. And going to go ahead and just make a recommendation to the village board, a panel consisting of our village liaison to the Plan Commission, the chairman of the Plan Commission, 2 village trustees, and myself served as the panel. And we bring the following recommendation to appoint Rita Stoles to our Plan Commission. So I'm going to ask, please, for a motion to approve this appointment of Rita Stoles to the Plan Commission for the term of February 15th, 2024 through April 30th, 2025. A motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Page. A second?
Second.
Trustee Kagan? Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? I should ask too, is there any discussion? But I know that we've had all the information sent out to anyone, so I'm so sorry that I did miss that. So the motion has been approved after being seconded, and Rita has been appointed and will be back before our village clerk to actually officially be appointed. So thank you all very much on that. Now moving to comments from the public, which is the next section of our meeting. We will pause to acknowledge any written or public comments that have been received prior to the meeting that do not relate to tonight's agenda. And if we do have any, we would then please enter those into the public record.
Mayor, we have one written comment and then one member of the public here tonight who'd like to make a comment. First written comment is McDonald's Development Project, and this has been submitted by Gary Biello and Linda Chan. Reference again, the McDonald's Development Project, which is being continued tonight. And then in-person public comment, Mr. Bill Yunker.
Thank you very much. And are there any members of the public here this evening that would like to make a public comment? Good evening, Bill. How are you?
Ask you to identify yourself, name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. I know you know. Try again.
My name is Bill Yunker. I live at 1540 Talcott Road, Woodridge, Illinois. Madam Mayor, Village Board Trustees, I would like to express my support for the construction of the McDonald's at the corner of 75th and Dunham. I do understand that it will bring inconvenience to the residents that live south of that area. But the McDonald's will also bring jobs to Woodridge, and it will also bring tax revenue. And I would also like to express my support for the village board's decision to approve the construction of the warehouse on Lamont Road. I did feel that the owners of the land were being held hostage because of the land being zoned ORI decades ago. And I commend the village board for allowing that a warehouse facility to be built and the owners to sell the land. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? We're going to now ask if there's any public comments on any items that are related to tonight's agenda. If so, I'd like to check with our administrator first if we've received anything prior to this meeting.
No, Mayor, we have none.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from our audience that would like to address the village board on anything that is on tonight's agenda? Well, we thank you all for being here this evening. So we're now going to move to our omnibus and I'm going to ask for a motion, please, to approve items A and B and the acceptance of items C and D, please. A motion?
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Krusek. A second?
Second.
Thank you, trustee Martinez. Any item to be separately considered this evening, or is there a request? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on and ask our administrator, please, to review the omnibus items for us on our agenda this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Cunningham. Members of the board, good evening. Item A, ordinance 2024-4. It's an ordinance granting a minor amendment to a site plan at 2250 75th Street. This is outdoor storage of propane tanks. Item B, ordinance 2024-5, an ordinance granting approval of a minor amendment to a site plan at 1000-1020 Davy Road. This is Bridgepoint, Woodridge. And then items C and D are previous minutes from prior board meetings.
Thank you very much. And if our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Krusek,
Aye.
trustee Page,
Aye.
trustee Martinez.
Aye.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
trustee Kagan,
Aye.
trustee Annalise.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Under the mayor's report, there's no official report this evening. However, we do encourage everyone and ask you to please stay connected to the Village of Woodridge. You can do this through the village's social media channels and our weekly e-newsletter. It's great information, and honestly, it makes all the difference knowing what we are actually working on as a village and throughout our community as well. That is my report this evening. Administrator Stonich, your report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Cunningham. First item A, ordinance 2024-6, an ordinance amending the municipal code of the Village of Woodridge, Title IX, zoning regulations, and we do have a presentation tonight from staff.
All right.
Good evening, Gabby.
Good evening. Pick up where we left off. So the next item was retail tobacco. So this is one that we've spoken about several times already. So these recommendations won't necessarily be new, but something that we're looking to come to a final decision on. So as of now, we have 5 retail tobacco stores within the village. The staff has understood from the board that we may be interested in limiting further expansion of these. As of right now, in the old code, they have been regulated as just general retail uses typically, so they would be allowed by right, I believe, in the B1 and B2 zoning districts. So in order to limit these or further regulate them moving forward, there are several ways we could go about doing this. The first would be to make them into a special use in those zoning districts where they're currently allowed, B1 and B2. The second would be to regulate via a separation distance requirement, which could be done through licensing rather than specifically within the zoning code. The map over on the right side shows a buffer distance requirement of 1/2 mile. There are 2 tobacco stores that are currently within less than 1/2 mile of each other. Those are 2019 75th and 7406 Janes, as you can see on the map. And the final suggestion or option we have for regulating tobacco retail further would be to put a maximum on the number of licenses that we would issue. These were presented to Plan Commission, and in an effort to regulate them to the fullest, Plan Commission did recommend both the special use and the regulation of the distance. I believe at that time we had presented the idea of a maximum number of licenses, so they didn't reflect on that. However, moving forward, staff's recommendation is to stick with the distance requirement. It does feel maybe like a little over regulatory to do both the special use and the distance requirement. Simply because we feel as though from a special use analysis perspective, the standards that we would have to create for that would maybe just be the distance. It's not really much of a land use evaluation, as that's why it's been allowed as a retail use in the past. If the goal is to truly limit, the proliferation of in a specific area or, within the whole village so that they're not close together, or the maximum overall, we think that options 2 and 3 would be more effective. So our recommendation, staff's recommendation tonight is to discuss limiting by the distance requirement and or the number of licenses. So limiting by the distance requirement would in theory also be a limit on the number, just because there would only be so many that could fit within the village before those zoning, before those B1 and B2 areas that are further than a half mile from each other are all filled up. So those are the recommendations in front of us tonight. And with that, I will open it up for discussion.
Thank you very much. So at this point, I'm going to ask the board to either pose any questions, any comments, discuss and deliberate. So if there is any trustee that would like to, trustee Page?
I think my question's for you, Attorney Pat. The current businesses that are within a half mile would be grandfathered.
That's correct. And they could continue to operate unless they had a change of ownership, which is usually defined as more than 50% of a new owner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? Any questions, comments?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, please.
so what is the actual recommendation of staff?
Staff's recommendation is to regulate via the maximum distance requirement. Should that be half a mile? That's the example we've used here. And then to evaluate if you'd like a maximum number of licenses as well. We do think that's effectively done by the distance requirement, but you could also, you could do that in addition.
If I could add, the distance requirement creates nonconformities. So, but if you just did a cap without a distance, if whatever your goal is, then we wouldn't create a nonconformity with the two businesses that are within the distance. It would just be a number of a cap of, you can only have 10, right? And it doesn't matter the distance. So, you can do both, or you can just do it with a cap. And if we don't care about the distance from one another,
And would this be like liquor licenses are now, where we could increase it if we wanted to, or when somebody leaves, we pull that license back? Or is it more like the video gaming licenses where we have a set number?
Well, as a home rule entity, you can, even for video gaming licenses, if you want to increase the number of licenses or decrease the number of licenses, you could. You can't take a license away from someone who's otherwise obviously in compliance with the rules. But let's say you have 7 establishments like this in town, 7 licenses, one of them goes out of business, you can decide to reduce the number of licenses to 6. Or you have 7 businesses, somebody comes in and they want to do an establishment, it's conforming, you decide you want to give it, you can increase the number to 8. Again, similar to what you do with liquor licenses, but you can also do that with cannabis, video gaming, and of course, this is enacted.
And back to trustee Page's question, if these are grandfathered in, we effectively say that if we did a distance requirement and they're within the half a mile or whatever we choose, that would not be something that could be sold if it was within that.
Well,
half a mile.
it couldn't be sold and still used as a tobacco retail shop, right? It could be sold and used for a different purpose, but it could
Right,
not
but
be.
I mean, you could not be sold as a tobacco.
Right. Trustee Krusak's tobacco shop could not be sold to me and become Attorney Pat's tobacco shop. That would kill the use if it was grandfathered in as legal non-conforming.
Okay, you probably wouldn't pay the price I would ask.
And I wouldn't want to do it anyway.
Okay,
I think maybe a central question and maybe something to start with would be, one, do we want to establish regulations regarding retail tobacco businesses?
I will say, I think the distances is over-regulatory. I think I can't believe I'm the one saying this, but it just seems like government getting a little bit too into telling people what kind of business they can operate.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? Trustee Blair?
Yes, I would prefer a maximum number and regulate the distance. We regulate the distance on alcohol, on liquor stores, not to be close to schools and whatnot. So I don't see that that's much different. So but I would be absolutely in favor of maximum number and to regulate the distance.
Trustee Blair, may I ask, how many would you maybe be thinking?
How many do we have now?
There's what, 5 on here? 1, 2,
5.
maximum 5. Okay. Gonna go right down the line. Trustee Martinez?
I concur with Trustee Blair. I think limiting the number of tobacco stores and just keeping an eye on the distance is the way to go.
And are you comfortable with the 5?
5.
Maximum 5, what we have right now currently? Okay. Trustee Anteles?
I am okay with regulating the distance, but I don't see a need to have a maximum if we're already regulating the distance.
Thank you. Trustee Page, you've already given a, okay. Trustee Krusek?
I agree with Trustee Page. I don't know that I care to see any more regulations put in. I would be more interested in seeing us look at some of the ancillary products that we've talked about regulating as opposed to just the tobacco shop themselves.
And Trustee Kagan?
I am fine with this as it is. I see no need for any additional spacing. As for additional locations, again, if someone really wants to bring in that business, let them bring in the business. So don't have any answers there.
So currently we have 2 trustees that would like to stay at a maximum of 5. And the distance was like, did we say 1.5 mile? That we're comfortable with? Okay. We have 1 trustee that is more distance only, nothing else. And then we have 3 with no regulations, adding nothing. Okay. And in looking at this, I'm more concerned with the distance. So the half mile, to me, I would be in favor. I see where, the 5 locations are now. I didn't maybe think about the 5 being the number, so I would be more open to that and maybe just going with a distance requirement. I'm not sure that's helpful, but I do like the idea of regulating some of this. So if we can do it by distance, I'm not sure how anyone else feels, but that's the feedback at this time. So
Madam Mayor,
yes, please, Trustee Page.
just for clarification, it's distance from each other, not like a distance from a school.
Right. That's correct.
We do already regulate tobacco stores from schools.
So that currently exists now.
Yes.
Correct.
How many feet? 2 or a mile?
100 or 2, I think it's 100.
Okay, I'm fine with that regulation.
So it's just right, the distance we're talking, and this is the between each other. Yeah, how close they can be. Okay, anyone else have anything else? So we're at a point where the next question would be to the trustees that said maximum 5 with distance. Is there any consideration if we just went with distance only, or are you wanting to restrict 5 maximum and stay with that?
I could live with the distance. I would, to trustee Krusak's point, I think it's very important for us to circle back about the ancillary products that are being sold.
That is-
I really would like to see that happen soon.
Yes, and we will. Thank you. It is on our next planning session, so yes.
I'll stay with the distance
Distance.
and flexible on the max.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both. Trying to get to more of a consensus here. So to the other trustees that have no regulatory, wanting to do no distance requirement, no maximum, we have 3 trustees that would agree with distance. Any of the other trustees have any possible interest in moving to distance requirements and be okay with that? Okay, so trustee Page, no, no, nope. Okay, all right. Thank you. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and move to the motion. So I'm going to go ahead and okay.
You're right. As of right now, it's listed as, is it listed as a special use in the use chart? It may be, I think that's where we left it, or I'm not sure. I'd have to double check. I mean, we have to open for discussion, so I don't think that there's a definitive answer.
So I think, Mayor, that seemed to be the direction would be for this issue, for staff to bring something back. And it sounds like we might have 4 elected officials in favor of the distance requirement. And then, of course, obviously, you can vote on whether you want to approve that or not when it comes before the board.
Counselor, it's currently listed as a permitted use in the B2 and the B3. I guess it would be placing and bringing forth a licensing ordinance that would have it as a distance, right? That's what got it, okay.
So taking all of the information and really what the discussion here this evening is, as our administrator brought forward the ordinance, which is an ordinance amending the municipal code of the Village of Woodridge, Title IX zoning regulations. And we just went through one item. Earlier, we had a study session where we went through a few items. It is apparent that there probably is much more discussion needed. But we will go through the items. We will take discussion from the board, but then I'm going to entertain a motion or consideration for moving this meeting forward. I think there's just more information needed, okay? But we want to go through the entire item, every item in this recommendation or ordinance rather, and then we'll come back, okay? But we'll entertain that motion if that's comfortable for the board, because I just know there's just been a lot of questions, and there have been excellent questions, and all of that needs to be considered, okay?
Sure. So there's just three more items. At least one or two of them will be fairly quick. Maybe I'll just go through all of them at once then.
Thank you.
Of course. Next is the sign chapter. This is here not because we're recommending any changes or at this point or requesting any feedback really. It's just because staff has made some significant edits to the draft text that our consultant had prepared that we did not previously discuss. So we just want to bring these to light. Some of the more notable ones are are listed here. For example, the sign text had included an additional regulation from the previous sign code that created a signable area ratio requirement. So the signable area is, for example, on a facade, the place where you can put a sign, not covering any windows or extending beyond the roof or covering any architectural features. The signable area ratio is the amount of that area that the sign can fill. So that was in place in the draft text that Tesca had prepared for wall signs and also for monument signs. So within that area of a monument sign, there was also a limitation on the ratio. Since this was new to our code, staff practiced applying this to a handful of sign permits that we've received over the past few years. And we did feel that it was helpful in addressing some aesthetic concerns for wall signs, but felt it was limiting for monument signs. So we've kept in the definition and the requirement to meet this signable area ratio for wall signs, but have removed it for monument signs simply because if you have a monument sign, you felt it was most effective to fill that limited space that you already have. We also listed a maximum height for awning signs, marquee signs, and blade signs. So those that wouldn't be necessarily ground mounted or, right above the door. They just didn't have a height listed. So now we are calling that out. That would avoid them being on like third or fourth stories or higher. We also removed the requirement to plant trees around monument signs. There is a landscape requirement around monument signs, but we felt that being required to plant a tree in front or, around a monument sign could just result in difficulty reading the sign, which is not what we want to require. We removed pole signs as an allowed sign type in a residential district. So that would be a freestanding sign, different from a monument sign style in that there's only one skinny leg holding it up rather than, a thick, wide base. So those just aren't as aesthetic. And they are currently allowed in the village, but we removed that they were now listed as allowed in residential. That has been eliminated. We also created a maximum clearance for pole signs in commercial districts. So that just means that we made it so that it has to start after a certain height so that you can't have the sign face starting, at eye level or, right where a car could drive you. It has to meet a certain distance so that it's safe to travel, to walk or have a plow travel under it through a parking lot. Those are the main highlights of what has been updated in the sign code. Again, we're not necessarily requesting any movement on this, just wanted to make everybody aware of what has been changed since the last time the text was in front of you. The fee in lieu for tree preservation is something that we've talked about briefly before. So what this is our current landscape code has tree preservation requirements. If a development is removing certain high quality qualifying trees, there is a requirement to replace these trees with other, quality new trees. Plan Commission had strongly wanted to see a alternative option rather than granting variances so it's not supposed to be in place of meeting these requirements, but it's in the situation where you can't meet the requirements. Rather than the village granting a variance, this would just give us the opportunity to collect a fee, which we would then apply to installing trees somewhere else in the village. So the Public Works team helped us identify the average cost of planting a tree within the village, which they determined is about $376. So for, staff time, we made that closer to 400 to make it a round number. So this is the cost that staff is proposing would be the fee in lieu per tree. We would write that into the fee schedule with the option to increase annually to keep up with increasing costs of trees. The Plan Commission did recommend an increase to this price, to this fee of 25 to 50% per tree. When we presented this to the board in the past, we did receive feedback, I believe, from one board member who recommended just covering our own costs at minimum. And staff does feel that covering our costs at about $400 would be a rational cost to put on the developer. Again, the first choice is that they meet the code, but this is just in lieu of the variance request. This would be an option to help us plant more trees in the village. So the question is, are we okay with the fee as is this $400? I'll move on to the next slide. The final topic we wanted to point out is community residences. This was known as group homes in the old code, and moving forward, it's identified as community residences. This is something that we haven't talked about in the past, but again, staff wanted to bring this to light because it's something that we had noticed in the code that was just not identified in front of you, but was different from the existing code. So the existing code, the old code that we have, states that state licensed group homes are allowed by right in residential districts, and that is per state law. So the reason for that is because that's the state statute that's consistent. I believe it's been in the code since '89, and that was proposed to remain in the code. However, our updated text added that non-licensed group homes, so this would be like a halfway house or a recovery house, again, not licensed by the state, would require a special use permit. The draft text in front of you tonight, we had removed that designation to make it more consistent with what we had allowed in the past. But at this point, we're specifically proposing that this comes back for further discussion so that we can really analyze what the appropriate regulatory method is for unlicensed group homes. And that's the last item we have on this topic.
Madam Mayor, a couple questions on the trees and the fee in lieu of. Would that only be available where they were not able to plant the replacement trees? Or could a developer just say, hey, I'm not going to plant any trees. What is it going to cost me?
Right, it's intended to be if they cannot meet the replacement requirements.
Okay. And you have an optional, or it said optional on increasing the costs annually. Can it be not an option, but actually something written into the code that once a year the price is adjusted? Because otherwise we're 6-7 years down the road and we've still kept it at $400. And we find out that it's $800 for a tree.
I think so, yeah, I think we can review it annually.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Krusek. Anyone else, please? Okay, thank you. So at this point, what we'd like to do is will be actually an omnibus motion. I'm going to ask for to continue items 10A and 10B, the previous two items, to our March 7th, 2024 Village Board meeting. If I could please ask for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Page, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Krusek. Any discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Aye.
Trustee Martinez,
Aye.
trustee Blair,
Aye.
trustee Kagan,
Aye.
trustee Annalise,
Aye.
trustee Krusek.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and move to the next item. Administrator Stonich.
Next item C, ordinance 2024-8, an ordinance granting a special use permit for a freestanding electronic message monument sign with variation for certain property at 5 Plaza Drive.
Thank you very much. If I could please have a motion to approve ordinance 2024-8, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Martinez. A second?
Second.
Thank you, trustee Antilles. Any discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
trustee Kagan,
Aye.
trustee Annalise,
Aye.
trustee Krusek,
Aye.
trustee Page,
Aye.
trustee Martinez.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next item D, ordinance 2024-9, an ordinance granting a special use permit for a freestanding electronic message sign and granting certain variations for property at 1901 75th Street.
Thank you. If I could please ask for a motion to approve ordinance 2024-9, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Antilles. A second?
Second.
Thank you, trustee Page. Any discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Kagan,
Aye.
trustee Annalise,
Aye.
trustee Krusek,
Aye.
trustee Page,
Aye.
trustee Martinez,
Aye.
trustee Blair.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next item E, ordinance 2024-10, an ordinance granting final plat of subdivision approval for Gary subdivision 1527 and 1531 Linden Circle.
If I could please have a motion to approve ordinance 2024-10, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Blair, and second by trustee Krusek. Any discussion on this item? Our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Annalise.
Aye.
Trustee Krusek,
Aye.
trustee Page,
Aye.
trustee Martinez.
Aye.
Trustee Blair.
Aye.
Trustee Kagan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item F, resolution 2024-7, a resolution awarding a contract with Operator XR for the acquisition of a virtual reality simulation system for our police department.
Thank you very much. If I could please have a motion to approve resolution 2024-7, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Krusek. Second, was that trustee Kagan? Thank you. Any discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Krusek,
Aye.
trustee Page,
Aye.
trustee Martinez.
Aye.
Trustee Blair.
Aye.
Trustee Kagan,
Aye.
trustee Annalise.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item G is the fourth quarter financial report for the budget year 2023. And we have Tracy Morocco, our fiscal operations manager here, Mayor, who will provide a brief presentation.
Thank you very much and welcome, Tracy.
Bring this way down. Good evening. All right, good evening, everyone. We know you're very familiar with these numbers by now, so we will walk through these fairly quickly, starting with the general fund. I'm just going to give a high-level overview of the variances, so if you have any questions, please ask. And I just want to point out that these are unaudited figures, so when you see these during our audit presentation, they might look a little different. All right, so revenues in the general fund through the fourth quarter total nearly $27 million. They're about $450,000 higher than budget, but $400,000 lower than last year. And that variance is due to sales tax revenues outperformed our budgeted estimates, while gas utility taxes, real estate transfer stamps, and building permits underperformed compared to 2022. Expenditures total nearly $25 million. This is $360,000 favorable to the budget, but $2 million higher than 2022. And the variance to 2022 is due to the $1 million transfer that we did from the general fund to the water and sewer fund for water main funding. And then also compared to 2022, personnel is $700,000 higher due to police retro pays. And then we also had several unfilled positions in 2022 that are now filled. Looking at the water and sewer fund, revenues for the fourth quarter total $12.3 million. So this is on track with budget and $1.6 million higher than 2022. And again, that variance is due to the $1 million transfer from the general fund. And then we also had increases to the capital improvement fee. We passed along the DWC water rate increase, and we also have improved interest income. Expenditures total nearly $14 million. That's $3.3 million higher than 2022, as capital projects total nearly $5 million in this fund this year. And then expenses are $2.5 million lower than the budget, as the Crabtree Interceptor project was partially rebudgeted to 2024. Capital Projects Fund. Through the fourth quarter, revenues are $10.5 million less than budget. They total about $4.8 million. And that variance to budget is due to the $11 million bond proceeds that we had originally planned for 2023. And then the variance to 2022 is about $800,000 less. And that's due to the $500,000 transfer that we did from the Federal Drug Enforcement Fund to this fund for the police facility project. We also had smaller variances and reduced revenues from tower rental and income tax. And then expenses total $18 million. That's $5 million higher than last year and $4.5 million lower than the budget, and that's related to the police facility. And then $3 million of the police facility project was rolled over to 2024. And then other funds, these were all included in the fund summary in your quarterly report. So if you have any questions, I can answer them, but I won't walk through each of these tonight. And then the last item is cash and investments. And I just want to point out here, if you notice the difference compared to the first quarter, we had nearly $75 million in cash and investments, and that was due to the bond proceeds, which we spent down over the year for the police facility. And then through the fourth quarter, nearly 90% of our village funds are in some kind of investment product. And as you can see from the pie chart, the village has a very diversified portfolio. Any questions?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. Going to open up to the board. Any questions at this time? Anyone? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next item H is ordinance 2024-3, an ordinance granting a major amendment to an approved final plat and plat of planned unit development, including certain exceptions, a special use for a drive-through, and a final plat of subdivision. This is the Wood Groves Festival proposed McDonald's at 1335 West 75th Street, Mayor.
So if I could, this item and the next three agenda items, which would be H, I, and J, all relate to the proposed McDonald's development at 1335 75th Street in Woodridge. The applicant has previously requested that this pending matter be continued originally to the March 21st Village Board meeting. For the benefit of the public, the village has received a revised request from the applicant to amend their request for a continuance to a new date of April 4th, 2024. So I now will ask for an omnibus motion to continue items H, I, and J to the April 4th, 24 Village Board meeting.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
You do have to continue to the next meeting,
Okay.
as we did this past one, and then it'll continue, unfortunately, keep getting continued.
Okay, so my
So,
apologies. So we're
yes.
going to then do the
March 7th.
March 7th. Okay. So my apologies. We'll go to March 7th and then we'll continue until the actual April 4th, 2024 date. My apologies for that. So I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion approving that to our next Village Board meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Page. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Antilles. Any discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, if the clerk would please call our roll.
Trustee Martinez?
Aye.
Trustee Blair?
Aye.
Trustee Kagan?
Aye.
Trustee Annalise?
Aye.
Trustee Krusek?
Aye.
Trustee Page?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. So we thank everyone for being here this evening and being in attendance. And to everyone watching, staying connected to the village means so much to us. And we do ask that you please do stay connected with us and to take good care. With no further business to discuss, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this regular meeting of the village board. Going to ask for a motion, please. So moved. Thank you, trustee Annalise. A second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Krusek. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? It is 7:59 PM and we are adjourned. Thank you.